Any Celtics in here? Yes, there are. 50, I got Murray. 49 off a modest season. Didn't take quite the leap. I'm sure some people thought he would. Scotty Barnes. LaMelo Ball, who I'm higher on than most, I feel like, even after a couple injured seasons. Mikal Bridges, who I think is going to slide nicely into a secondary role. Again, there in New York. Jaren Jackson Jr., who I'm not as high on as others. Brandon Ingram, who's obviously taken a hit here. Julius Randle, who you could argue should be higher, but hurt last year. Probably going to become more of a secondary guy on this Knicks team, given the additions here. Evan Mobley and Jared Allen end up right next to each other, funny enough. And with all these bigs here in the 40s, it's a good look for Kristaps Porzingis, despite the injury coming into this year and his likely lack of availability, that he moves into the top 50 here. That's probably not where he would have been coming off last year. But he just had a monster year, Noah, when he was available. The three-point shooting came through. The post game was the best of any player in the league. Defensively, he had a real step forward, too. I think was one of the best rim percentage defenders in the league last year. So if you're going to – injuries, obviously a factor here. If you're going to pick a center right now, after some of the elite, this is a guy who can complement your stars if you're a contending team about as well as anyone. That obviously played a big role in Boston's success last year.
Yeah, so I think with Porzingis is that a healthy Porzingis is above a 41. I think you can move him up some of the other bigs that you have on this list. But the injuries, I almost feel like they're inevitable. Like they're obviously you hope that he doesn't have to miss almost the entire playoff run like he did this year. And you hope that he's able to keep things to strains and soreness rather than anything major, which he did experience a couple of those. But yeah, I think it has to impact your rankings. So you probably have them about right. Julius Randle and Brandon Ingram are both interesting because they're both like secondary options. And I'll speak mostly on Julius Randle in particular, but I feel like he's somebody that, a lot of Knicks fans think that the Knicks are better without him, right? Like there's a lot of questions around how effective his points are, if he's an empty calories player. I think this year is going to answer a lot of questions about him because they have a really good roster around him. You take Julius Randle off this Knicks team, and I think they're easily a top 3 seed in the East. So he should be helping that, right? And I'm really curious because I loved what we saw from the Knicks during this playoffs, and obviously he wasn't a part of that. But if he can come in and not disrupt anything that they're doing, but still help, like that's really, I would be really, really impressed with what he does at that point. I just don't know if that's going to be the case. I have a feeling that he's going to disappoint. We haven't really seen him been able to mesh that well and still score and produce at a high level and not disrupt kind of the offensive cadence and everything. So he's a tough one.
It's interesting, too, because it depends what you need. If you need a guy who's going to run your offense and eat innings and carry a ton of weight, which he does or he's done there in New York, he's capable of that. And that allowed him to make 2 All-NBAs. So I'm sure some proponents of him will say that. There's also a lack of positional versatility with him that I think is going to show through this year. If he could play some center for them, that'd be huge given that they lost Hartenstein. But he probably can't or he won't. I don't know which it is. But I'm not as high on him as the average person. Again, playoff struggles, ball stopping, and defense. Porzingis to me showed out as a defender last year. And if you want to put Allen over him, a borderline DPOY guy who's carried an offensive load, who I think took some nice steps as a passer last year too, I'll allow that. Mobley, not as much. I don't think there's enough offense there, even though he is one of the best defenders in the league right now. But he took a nice step in that Celtics series either. So again, these are more groupings than saying one guy's absolutely better over another. But I do feel good about Porzingis atop the list of these guys. Give me him over Jaren Jackson.
Yeah, there's a common thread in this group. This group has a common thread. They're like the same energy. Yeah. It's hard to explain. I feel like it's a lot of guys that have some defensive intangibles and just like raw things about them that make you optimistic, but then it hasn't necessarily come together to fruition the way that it maybe will down the road, or it could at least with what they have to offer. I feel like Jaren Jackson, before FIBA, I had a different view of him, and then watching him in FIBA, like I have not been able to flip the switch on what.
And the fouling, I can't get past it.
Yeah. But again, he's a guy that if you put another big next to him, like that really helps. And so, and like a true center. So a lot of these guys, it's like maybe they haven't been in the right position to succeed.
Hey, Bowie Manning here. If you made it this far, you probably enjoyed this video, so subscribe, turn on notifications, and check out our social media platforms at Celtics CLNS.